right, so this is an excerpt from my novel that will most likely never be published. So, it's called my novel. Okay. Kat's funeral was on February 23rd, a Wednesday. Johnson's mother drove into Omaha that morning. She had lost 2 husbands in the span of 4 years. So if anyone knew the pain she was feeling, it was her. She had immersed herself in support groups after the death of her second husband and come out the other side stronger. Johnson knew he didn't have her strength. She drove as Johnson remained silent. His mother rarely listened to the radio in the car, so he was thankful for the silence. He wondered if he could write a letter to a senator, or maybe the president even, doing away with the whole month of February. It was the shortest month of the year, yet every year he seemed to pack a lifetime of pain into it. February 15th, his stepfather passed away. February 18th, Harry Carey died. February 19th, his father, and now February 20th, Kat and his unborn child. As they pulled into Omaha, he made his mother stop at a convenience store. He said he was going in to pick up a pack of cigarettes, even though he had a half-full pack in his pocket. He went in without her and bought a 6-pack of Budweiser and a couple airplane shooters of Jägermeister. The cashier offered him a paper sack to put the beer in, but he refused. He wasn't trying to hide it from his mother, so as he exited the store, he twisted open one of the shooters and drank it in one large swallow. He threw the empty bottle into the trash can outside of the front door and slowly made his way back into his mother's car. She knew better than to try and talk him out of opening the first of the 6-pack, so he did it as he pocketed the second shot. They pulled out of the convenience store. His mother had gotten directions to the church, knowing that Johnson was incapable of the simplest tasks in his current state. She wasn't going to force him to do anything. He knew that she would let him deal with his grief at his own pace. All he wanted was to ease the anxiety in his belly, and he figured the alcohol was his safest bet. Yet somehow it wasn't working. As they got closer to the church, he knew he would see Kat's family and friends, and in his mind he kept wondering to himself if her parents knew that she was pregnant. Would they accept him or blame him? She was sober when she had left Wayne that morning, but did they know that? He wasn't sober. Would they smell the alcohol on his breath? Would they expect it? Would they care? His mother drove by the hill that overlooked the golf course where they had sat in the car and professed their love for each other the very first time. He could feel the tears building in his eyes. He wanted to be strong, but his emotions were betraying him. He needed something, anything, to keep himself from breaking. He took hard pulls from his can of Budweiser, hard enough that he could hear the can wrinkle in his hand. Sleep had been hard to come by. Every time he closed his eyes, the future he was so excited for, the future he was convinced would give his life meaning, was being ripped from him. As they pulled into the church parking lot, Johnson quickly downed the last of his first can of beer, not caring they would surely be warm by the time Kat was lowered into the ground. They entered the church and eased to the back row of pews. Johnson kept his head down. He didn't want to be acknowledged or noticed. He couldn't bring himself to approach the front of the church in Kat's casket. He didn't want to see her family. He was being selfish. He was aware of it, but he was trying his hardest to keep his shit together. Breaking in front of her family was not an option. He could hear music coming from the church's sound system, barely audible over the typical church sounds of attendees coughing, babies cooing and crying. Emma, I think your cheese ball. Babies cooing and crying, and the inevitable sobs at a funeral for a beautiful girl and an unborn baby whose lives were taken too soon. Thank you. All he could think was, God is punishing me. He saw us fucking in the chapel, desecrating his house. He took Kat and my baby, and now he's punishing me. The sudden urge to scream began to grow in the cracks and crevices of his mind, threatening to overwhelm him. The walls of the church began to close in around him. He was getting short of breath. The memory of his first and only confession came flooding in. When he was 15, he had been confirmed in the Catholic Church. One of the requirements of confirmation was to confess his sins to a priest. He had been struggling with his relationship with his dad, and when he entered the confessional, he decided he wasn't going to hold back. God needed to know how much pain he was in. The priest was separated from him by a sliding window. Johnson chose to remain anonymous. As he was relaying the details of his broken relationship with his father, he started to feel hot and dizzy. His heart was racing, and before he could catch himself, he fell backwards in the dark on his side of the confessional. When he awoke, the priest was standing above him with tears rolling down his face. Confused and startled, Johnson looked up at the priest and asked, "Are you okay?" "Yeah, I'm fine," the priest responded, looking relieved and wiping the tears from his eyes. "Are you okay?" "Well, I guess so," he responded with embarrassment. "I think I'm done with my confession, though. So much for anonymity." The memory of that day was fresh in his mind as he thought he might step out for some fresh air. He thought maybe he could run out to his mother's car and pound a beer quick. He started to get up from the pew when Kat's sister noticed him. She was walking to her seat in the front of the church when she grabbed Johnson and pulled him into the aisle. She threw her arms around him. Up until that point, he had been able to hold back the tears. The fact that she knew of their engagement and the baby Kat was carrying broke him. Come sit up front with the family," she said. "We're so glad that you were here. She's your family too."